We're happy to have you.
Hello, it's like Saturday morning.
I love that.
Angela Rye will tell you, Elie, I have read the column you wrote in The Nation, It's Impossible to Overstate the Damage Done by the Supreme Court in this term. I've read that to so many people, given it to so many people. I think that is one of the most important things that people should be reading right now.
Thank you so much. It is the issue, to me, it's the issue of the moment. People forget the Supreme Court is a third branch of government. It has just as much power as the other two, and if you ask the Supreme Court, it has more power than the other two, because it thinks that it has a veto power over the branches of government that we elect. So as much as I love being at the Democratic National Convention, as much as I love voting rights, according to the Supreme Court, my vote's just for show.
That's right.
Because they are the ones who think that they have the real power to shape the laws and rights and responsibilities in this country.
So why are more elected officials just coming out and saying the Supreme Court is no longer a legitimate institution?
Yeah, why indeed? At some level, I'm happy they don't, because I get a job.
Oh, get out of here. Oh my goodness.
Why don't they say that? I think that there are a lot of reasons. One of the reasons is that we have elevated the court to the status of clergy. Yes. Right, to the status of religion, right? And so we have such a genuflect and a respect for the Supreme Court that calling them to the carpet for their BS is not something that comes naturally for the other branches of government. It certainly doesn't come naturally for older, established politicians. I think that's one problem. The second problem is that, you know, especially on my side of the aisle, on the black left, on the progressive left, we have institutional memory of when the court was good. Right, of when the court was a leader for civil rights, a leader for voting rights, right? And so we look back on those days and we think, well, we shouldn't be too harsh on the court now just because they don't agree with us. People forget the Warren Court, that era that I'm talking about, that was about like 15 years. For the other 220 years, the court has been one of the most reactionary branches of government in the country. It has routinely kept its foot on the neck of black and brown folks in this country. And you can go all the way back to 1857, the Dred Scott decision, where the court, not the Constitution, not even the slavers who wrote the Constitution put this in their document, but the Supreme Court said a black man has no rights that the white man is bound to respect. That was a court decision, not a constitutional amendment, right? That's 1857. That started the Civil War. You can go all the way up to 1908, Plessy v. Ferguson. That's the Supreme Court that said separate but equal is just fine and does not violate the 14th Amendment that people just fought and died and fought a whole war over, right? That's a Supreme Court decision. So if you take a longer view, the court's always on its BS.
Can I ask you, Elie, you know, I've been talking to folks a lot about how important it is for us to have our own legal defense fund, our own strategy, one, to protect elected officials that the Department of Justice is targeting regardless of who's in power, but also to protect our civil rights and our interests. We saw affirmative action dismantled in this Supreme Court that you're talking about. What about us using that same approach to go after things like legacy admissions, right? Going after the contractors who use their white wives as front companies in the federal government and get some of those affirmative action benefits. What about using those same strategies? Have you thought, okay, you ready, go ahead.
So I'm going to answer that question, but I want to pre-answer that question with something, right? Because one of the questions I've gotten a lot at this convention from, you know, average, you know, random black delegates that are here at this event. How does the Supreme Court impact black people? And how are our rights affected by the Supreme Court? And one of the things that I always try to tell people is look at what they say in Project 2025.
Yeah.
Because your question, Angela, it harkens to there is an organization that is supposed to defend the civil rights of us. It is called the Division of Civil Rights in the Department of Justice. Look at what Project 2025 says about the Civil Rights Division. It wants to change the Civil Rights Division, take it away from defending the rights of black people and instead defend the rights of, wait for it, white folks. It wants to make the Civil Rights Division, and this is, again, they wrote this down. They want to use the Civil Rights Division to sue companies that use what they're calling DEI and hire black people as violating the civil rights and the 14th Amendment rights of white folks. That's their plan. Right? So That's my pre-answer. In terms of, to get to the heart of your question, like why don't we have more legal defense funds, and I'll just get a shout out the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, Janae Nelson. I saw her here.
Lawyers Committee and others, but they're designed to do something different. We need a proactive fighter, like they do. Like what is it, America's First Legal?
First Legal, that's the Stephen Miller thing. Your problem with that is that you always run into the judges. You always run into the Supreme Court, right? So I can give you the most eloquent, the most well-researched, the most detailed lawsuit in the world. Neil Gorsuch is going to rip that up and use it as toilet paper.
That's real.
Damn. Right?
Can we? That's why. Can we invite the rest of the audience into a question we asked earlier today when we were eating, which was we talked about the expansion of the court by expanding it by 3 seats, right? Yeah. Because that's what that expansion, 4 seats, I think, that would get us above basically where this whole ideological imbalance is. You offered what I thought was a revolutionary set of ideas, and I'd ask that you share that with our co-hosts and our listeners.
Right, look, I'm for court expansion. The current plan on the table is adding 4 seats to match up with our 13 circuits. We used to have 9 circuits regions of the country, and that gave us 9 justices. Now we have 13 lower circuits. 13 justices plus 4, that's the thought process behind plus 4. I am for plus 20. I want us to have 29 judges on the Supreme Court. Does that sound a lot? It ain't. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which covers California, Arizona, Nevada, Alaska, Hawaii, Washington, and Oregon, they have, 29 judges, right? Yeah. So we're going to find enough chairs to have 29 Supreme Court justices, right? Number 2, what does all the lower courts do? They hear their cases not as a 29-member body, but as a 3-member panel chosen by random lot. Can you imagine living in a country where you don't get to choose your judges? I'm sorry. Can you imagine living in a country where white folks don't get to choose their judges?
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
That makes them like black folks, not getting to choose, right? And so if you have a 29-member court, most cases are heard by a 3-judge panel. They don't know which judges are coming, which means they have to make their arguments center mass, as opposed to knowing that Alito or Roberts or Gorsuch is going to be there to bail them out. And then my last point that I made to Andrew at lunch was, think about what we want the Supreme Court to do. We want it to have moderate, center mass, universally agreeable decisions, right? The more people we have on the court, the more likely we are to get moderate decisions, because more people make for narrower majorities trying to get everybody on the same page. Everybody knows this in their personal life. If you got to get 4 or 5-year-old boys to go to dinner, you might go to some places you ain't supposed to go. You might go to some places your wife doesn't want you to go, right? You might end up at the club, right? You got to get 29 people at your family reunion to go to dinner. You're going to go to Applebee's. Yeah. You're going to go to Chili's. Yeah. You're going to do some center mass anodyne thing, right?
Yeah.
So when you are talking about a 15-14 split decision on a 29-member Supreme Court, I promise you, getting those 15 cats into the same opinion, it's going to make it super narrow and super mainstream. 29 is the number.
Well, Elie,
it's a brilliant idea.
It is great. And Elie, you brought up January 6th, and I know as you leave us,
can I say one more question, Elie, before we get to that? The other narrative.
Can we at least just introduce the officer? Tiffany, would you?
The reason it got so tight in here. The reason it got so tight on this thing.
Tim, go ahead.
Be quick, Charlamagne, because I know you care a lot about the Supreme Court.
He really does.
I want you to ask your question, but I'll be very quick and introduce Officer Harry Dunn, who recently ran for Congress out of Maryland. Better known as a superhero.
He is a superhero.
You may recognize him. We saw him a lot during the impeachment hearing. Yeah. But where we first met him was on that fateful day, January 6th. When you saw somebody out there throwing bows out there, handling folks, and I love you, and I think you are an American hero, and it is our honor to have you tonight. So we're definitely going to get to you, but I do want because Charlamagne has asked about the Supreme Court several times, so I'm curious to hear Charlamagne's question and Elie's answer.
Well, no, it's just a narrative that I'm seeing. Like, the more people call out the Supreme Court, they say that people are only calling out the Supreme Court now because it has a conservative majority. Right. So could you tell us why it doesn't matter what the party majority is, it's what they're actually doing?
Yeah, so there are 2 answers to that question. One, I hate their decisions, and I'm willing to do anything I can to stop them because their decisions are taking away rights. I don't run away from saying, like, I'm mad at the current Supreme Court. But what the higher ideal here, right, is that the Supreme Court as a whole has too much power. And I'd be saying that if it was a Democratic Supreme Court or a Republican Supreme Court, because the people in the system that are supposed to have the power are the voters.
That's right.
And the Supreme Court comes over the top of the voters and tells us what we're allowed to vote for, what we're allowed to believe, what we're allowed to pass legislatively. And that was never the intention. So my last answer to your question, Federalist 78. So the Federalist Papers are like the John Adams and Alexander Hamilton writing about what the Constitution is supposed to be, right? There is one Federalist paper about the Supreme Court. It's called Federalist 78. And in the Federalist 78, Alexander Hamilton says the Supreme Court should be the least dangerous branch of government because it has neither the power of the purse, that means it can't raise taxes, or the power of the sword, that means it doesn't have an army. The next time Alexander Hamilton would be as wrong, he'd be firing his gun up into the air in New Jersey.
Damn.
Wow.
That's how wrong that man was, right? And so we need to get back to a, dare I say, conservative, dare I say, founding principle of the Supreme Court not being up our ass the entire time.
Damn.
That's what I'm saying.
Elie?
That's
I gotta
real.
go. Can I say one more thing?
Okay.
Yes.
Officer done. So I've been at this convention. A lot of people have asked to take my picture. I've asked to take my picture with 2 people. And one of them was Officer Dunn.
Thanks for bringing us that.
Thank you, Elie.
Thank you, Elie.
Now, Elie, before you came up, Elie, I saw you picking out your afro. You definitely gonna have to do it when you take these headphones off.
Yes.
But I am so grateful for you. You know it. We love you, brother.
brother.
We love your
Thank you for your
passion.
brilliance.
Absolutely, every time.
Thank you, Elie.